The ship that won the Kilrathi War, the Excalibur, was a powerful superfighter flying for the Terran Confederation. It simply outmatched almost anything the Kilrathi Imperial Space Forces had in the air at the time, the only exception being Prince Thrakath's personal Bloodfang Mark II fighter. The Excalibur entered production in 2669, when the Terran Confederation Navy was reeling from a series of defeats beginning with a nearly catastrophic Battle of Earth in the previous year. No one could have known that this miracle fighter would be an integral part in humanity's final triumph over the Kilrathi, in a time when defeat seemed inevitable, especially in the aftermath of the Behemoth disaster. The first instance of the Excalibur seeing combat was in defense of the Tamayo Sector worlds. The TCS Victory was stationed in the system and was responsible for overseeing the final test of the prototype fighter. Its test pilot, one Jace Flash Dillon, only had orders to conduct tests with the Excalibur, with nothing being said about participating in combat operations with the Victory battle group, even going as far as to ignore a general scramble alarm where every pilot was to sortie, on the grounds that, "My talents won't be wasted on your little skirmishes." Angered by this flippant attitude, Colonel Christopher Blair, with the help of Chief Tech Rachel Coriolis, managed to steal away the Excalibur for one mission to intercept a Kilrathi invasion force en route to Tamayo II. The Excalibur handled herself exceptionally well under the veteran hands of Maverick, cutting through countless waves of Vaktoth heavy fighters, Darket light fighters, Drelthi IVs, and ending with the destruction of the Kilrathi troop transports. The battle ended in total victory for the Confederation. The Kilrathi forces were obliterated in large part due to the Victory's flight wing and the performance of the Excalibur. But one person was less than pleased. Now it was Flash's turn to be angry at the Colonel for stealing away his baby, and challenged him to a duel in the flight simulator to determine who was the better pilot for the Excalibur. Hours later, a humiliated Flash puts in a transfer to the Victory's flight roster, at the personal request of Colonel Blair. The Excaliburs began to see frontline service during the latter half of 2669, with its debut mission being the daring rescue of Dr. Severin from the Kilrathi prison planet of Alcor 5. This rescue would be the first step in General James Taggart's long-shot plan to win the war through the destruction of Kilra via Dr. Severin's invention, the Temblor bomb. The second step was to secure the Freya system for its backdoor jump point to Kilra, and the Hyperion system to test the new weapon on a planet located there that was found to be similar to Kilra. Once again, the Excaliburs proved themselves and excelled in their space superiority role in Freya. In a one-on-one basis, the Kilrathi simply had nothing in its starfighter fleet that could counter such an advanced fighter. But where their technology failed them, their numbers did not, and the Excaliburs would often find themselves piloting against odds that previous Confed fighter pilots would have been unwilling to engage in. But nothing could stop the Excaliburs, and Freya would eventually be taken by the Confed fleet. And when an Excalibur successfully tested the Temblor bomb on a planet in the Hyperion system, they set the stage for the final strike to Kilra. With the Confederation fleet rallied at Freya to distract the Kilrathi from the Temblor strike, Lancelot Flight, led by Colonel Blair and his wingmen, infiltrated themselves into the Kilra system using Confed's first truly effective cloaking devices outfitted to their Excaliburs. While his wingmen were lost en route to the target, Maverick was able to fly into Kilra itself and detonate the T-bomb on the precise fault line needed to destroy the planet, and the majority of the Kilrathi fleet that was in orbit around Kilra. This loss was so devastating to the Kilrathi people that they soon after surrendered to the Terran Confederation, genuinely ending the war. No other fighter in the Confederation fleet at the time could have done any of this. None. While no one could truly dispute Christopher Blair's infamous piloting skill, he could not have accomplished this legendary feat in, say, a Hellcat fighter or a longbow bomber. Chris Blair may have been the man that won the war, but the Excalibur was the fighter that enabled him to do just that. When it comes to technical specs, the Excalibur was the cutting edge of fighter technology in both Terran and Kilrathi fleets. Its cruising speed was rated at 500 kps compared to the Arrow's 520. Its maneuverability was considered in between the Arrow and the Hellcat 5, with the Excalibur's maximum yaw, pitch, and roll at 70, 75, and 70 degrees per second. The Excalibur's shields rated at 250 centimeters armor equivalent and 110 centimeters of armor, making its defensive loadout on the same level to that of the much heavier Thunderbolt 7, with the only difference being 10 to 20 centimeters of armor between the two fighters. Its offensive armament consisted of 4 tachyon cannons that were powerful enough to rip through the shields of capital ships, and 2 Reaper cannons which were essentially an upgraded, faster-firing version of the older ion cannon. In terms of missile loadouts, it would be typically armed with 6 friend or foe missiles and 6 image recognition missiles. In the event that a Temblor bomb was loaded, the 6 missiles loaded inward of the ship, usually the IRs, would be swapped out and replaced with the T-bomb. An important feature of the Excalibur was that unlike the other Confederation frontline fighters, with the exception of the longbow bomber, was that it carried a jump drive, which allowed it to operate with a degree of autonomy away from carriers or bases. And when combined with a cloaking device, its potential for infiltration was vast, as was displayed by Lancelot Flight in their battle to Kilrathi. Had the war not ended mere months after the Excalibur's introduction, Confed could very well have used them for long-range strikes into Kilrathi-held systems. After the war, the Excalibur continued to see service with presumably more being produced, though in far less numbers than in wartime. Its Reaper cannon was replaced with the Ion cannon on the grounds that the Reaper was far too expensive and maintenance-heavy to justify its use in peacetime. The same rationale was also applied to why most, if not all, Excaliburs were not fitted with cloaking devices. Its missile hardpoints were also downgraded to 8 from its previous 16, with the friend or foe missiles replaced with the presumably cheaper heat seekers. The most noted usage in this time period was by the Black Lance forces to instigate a new war between the Terran Confederation and their longtime allies, the Union of Border Worlds, by using Excaliburs to attack Border World civilians. The Excaliburs would continue to maintain their vigil over the Terran Confederation throughout the 2670s and into the early 2680s, but by then they had begun to be superseded by the newest generation of fighters by the time of the Nephilim War in terms of raw flight performance and offensive-defensive armament. However, regardless of what the future holds for this extraordinary spacecraft, it has already cemented its place in history as a versatile fighter that at its peak, none could challenge. Alright, let's take a quick look to see what's out there. Wing Commander meme. Images. Yeah. What the? What? Never heard of such a thing. Okay, this seems like bullshit, but I've never heard of this in 20 years of having Wing Commander 3. I don't know. Alright, back in. Let's see. Alt-S. Oh my god. What the